Hi, I'm Brian McKenzie, and today we're going to explore the often put forth belief that Christians throughout history have tried to suppress knowledge, stifle innovation, and stop exploration. In this episode, we'll be discussing the myth of the flat earth Christians. While there certainly have been many Christians individually that have believed numerous things, there is no evidence of Christians as a whole or as a doctrine ever believing the earth was flat. Throughout antiquity, we see the rise of the idea that the earth was spherical, especially in Greece. From Pythagoras to Plato to Aristotle, there was a growing awareness of the shape of earth. During the Roman Empire, the Greek understanding of this was disseminated across the known world. At the time that Jesus was born, the prevailing wisdom was that the earth was round. From here, we're going to skip ahead to where the flat earth problem begins, the 1700s. As we go forward through this history, we will see how the view of the past gets altered and the past history becomes myth. During the 1700s, there was a decent amount of conflict in certain areas between the Protestants and the Catholics. In an effort to belittle and campaign against the Catholics, the Protestants accused them of believing the earth was flat. This argument fallacy is an ad hominem, which is when you attack the person or group instead of debating the subject. So the Protestants basically called the Catholics stupid and thus start the flat earth myth. Only the first time it didn't get any traction because everyone recognized it as rhetoric. So fast forward a little to 1828. The famous author of Rip Van Winkle, Washington Irving, writes a highly romanticized and fictionalized account of Christopher Columbus's journey to the New World. In the book, he describes an environment in which Columbus is one of the few rational people that know the earth is round, while others argue against him that it is flat based on scriptural grounds. These Bible thumpers, if you will, are presented as ignorant fools rejecting reality and impeding progress. This whole event, as described, of course, never happened. Now, Columbus did get into an argument with the commission he proposed his travels to. However, it was not about Earth being flat. Their debate in reality was about the distance and location of the east coast of Asia. Next, in 1834, Jean-Antoine Latran, an anti-religious academic, published a book claiming the Church Fathers, including people such as St. Augustine, all believed the earth was flat. These claims have easily been proven false by multiple researchers in the 20th century. There are no writings by Augustine or the other church leaders about the earth being flat. After Latran in 1837, William Whewell, an English philosopher of science, published a book in which he cites Lactantius of the 3rd century as making a flat earth argument in some of his writings, as well as Cosmas the monk in some of his writings. Whewell tries to make the argument that in the Middle Ages things were so backwards, people, specifically Christians, believed the earth was flat. The part about Lactantius and Cosmas was true. However, he failed to mention that the Church Fathers all rejected these writings many times throughout history, and even sometimes with a rather insulting tone. So up until this point, we have 3 books, 2 of which nearly complete fiction, one of which is a hasty generalization with cherry-picked examples. For years, these myths permeate until we reach the point at which the myth explodes. The 2 people most responsible for the myth is John William Draper and Andrew Dickinson White. Draper was a chemist who is credited with producing the first clear photograph of a female face and the first detailed photograph of the moon. White, meanwhile, founded Cornell University, the first explicitly secular university in the United States. These men were very influential. They also are the most influential people in conflict thesis. So what is conflict thesis? This is the idea that science and religion are at war with each other. Both of these men believe this adamantly. I think it's a safe characterization to say these men were hostile in their thoughts on religion. In 1874, Draper writes the book History of the Conflict Between Religion and Science. It was a bestseller with quotes like, "During the Dark Ages, affairs of men fell into the hands of ignorant and infuriated ecclesiastics, parasites, eunuchs, and slaves." White, meanwhile, wrote in 1876, "The warfare of science, And then in 1896, History of the Warfare of Science with Theology in Christendom. That's right, even the book title refers to the conflict as warfare. Both of these men in their writings not only perpetuated the myth of flat earthers during the Dark Ages to demonize Christianity, but also perpetuated the myth that science and religion are inherently in conflict. As a result of them, during the 1890s to 1920s, there was a huge belief in the flat earthers idea. So let's review. Historically, there is no evidence at any point of the church believing or pushing a flat earth doctrine. There were, however, a very few and perhaps only two prominent people who believed the earth was flat. Then what we see is people in their hate and anger demonizing others with no factual basis to make a point. It starts with the Protestants and then goes to some disgruntled scientists. The exception being Irving, who was just writing a whimsical account of Columbus. I think it also should be noted that both John Draper and Andrew White grew up in the church. Both were baptized, and by all accounts had difficult childhoods. Conflict thesis would have been an absurd idea if not for the debate of evolution going on. They used this to justify presenting false evidence and claiming war with Christianity. We can induce that their anger at religion was a product of their experience and not the result of research. Science isn't at war with religion, but they were. Sadly, these ideas exist to this day, with people like Charles Dawkins telling his followers to, quote, openly mock and ridicule people who believe. So remember, the flat earth myth was created as a tool of ridicule to insult and belittle. It is not history, just propaganda. If you like our videos, go ahead and subscribe to our channel, and we'd love to hear back from you guys, so feel free to leave your thoughts down below in the comments section.